Hello and welcome to Critical Weeb Theory. Today's episode is split into 5 distinct parts that can be listened to in any order at your leisure. Kind of like an open world podcast, if you will. Haha, yes. All the timestamps for each part will be in the description of wherever you're listening to this. Part 1 is all about Bocchi the Rock, and there are mild spoilers for some of the recent episodes, but nothing that would ruin your viewing. The second part's about Pokemon. If you want to go in absolutely blind to the latest Pokemon games, I would skip this, but otherwise the spoilers are pretty vague and mild, and there's not any story spoilers whatsoever. The third part is about Legend of Galactic Heroes and a little bit about Star Wars. So if you want to go completely blind on those, I'd skip it. Otherwise, again, they're mild. Fourth one is about Chainsaw Man. There are no real spoilers. We keep it pretty vague. And the last one's Spy Family, which also no real spoilers there either, other than some discussion about what happens in the recent episodes. Other than that, I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoy this new format of like splitting the podcast down into smaller chunks. We think it'll be better for the long term. And yeah, enjoy. Before Legend of Galactic Heroes, and thus before anime, I was
before anime.
Before it, yeah, because it was like also one of the first anime I watched when I got into the hobby.
Hey, the hobby,
yeah. When I got into the hobby, you know. But like,
oh, that's not what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, that's cute. He thinks it's just a hobby.
Oh.
Listen, people on the internet will get pissed at if you say anime is just a hobby. It's a way of life.
I guess that's fair. Before I was watching anime, obviously like the new Star Wars movies came out, so I went a bit through a renewed Star Wars phase, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was pretty excited that they're gonna make new movies, so I like rewatched all the old movies.
I've also never seen a Star Wars movie in my life. I have a lot of points of heresy, but this is one of them.
Listen, I'll be honest. Star Wars is like not good. I'll be real. That shit's ass.
1, 2, 3,
okay,
4,
no.
5.
I refuse to engage. I refuse to engage in this.
The joke is that we're sitting next to each other this time, and so the click is completely unnecessary.
It's true. It's fun when audio is synced automatically by the power, by the magic
of recording on the same microphone.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I will not give you your customary hellos. You've already been said to. That was my joke. How are y'all doing? Let us know in the comments. Feed our engagement system.
Oh, yeah.
And while you're there,
like, comment, subscribe. Feed my ego. Feed it. Okay.
Yeah. And while you're there, be sure to purchase our new like coin. It's available for free by clicking the thumbs up button. Then you have it.
We finally made a cryptocurrency that's worth something. Okay. By essentially making it the fuck up, we have a currency that means... I feel like
that's better, though. It's like we're not running any sort of scam.
Yeah. It's a currency that means whatever you want it to mean.
We receive your likes, and you receive a 1 minute 30-second intro that's not going anywhere.
What are we doing today? We're doing a variety episode.
Woo! I have campaigned extensively to call this Critical Weeb Theory's 4-course meal. The reason being, our last episode, which was really good, by the way, and you should all listen to it, had a lengthy diatribe about food. And I feel like making more food references is the way we can go to grow our channel and grow our content and our community.
Yeah, I think it's good for the brand, to be honest. It's good for the brand to talk about food.
Basically, originally we were going to talk about one thing, but then we realized we wanted to talk about more than one thing. And then we realized that none of these ideas are like super complicated. So let's start by talking about one of the idea. Hey Mo, have you heard about the new hit anime, Bocchi the Rock?
I have heard about the new hit anime.
People won't
Bocchi the
stop
Rock.
talking to you about Bocchi the Rock.
Well, it's actually a little more subtle than that. Basically, my quote beef unquote with Bocchi the Rock. While I was working really hard on this Chainsaw Man thing, I wanted to make it like interesting. I wanted it to be like, you know, new person friendly, and I worked on it. And when I started it, Chainsaw Man was all the rage, right? Everyone was like, Chainsaw Man, oh my gosh, it's coming out. Like, is it good? Is it bad? Is the 3D and stuff like that? I was like, hell yeah, this is gonna be a hell of an episode. And then I finished, well, as I was finishing the Chainsaw Man episode, suddenly I noticed people stopped talking about Chainsaw Man. And everyone was talking about socially anxious girl with the guitar. They're like, oh yeah, you know, the real anime of the season is Bocchi the Rock, right? And I was like, Bocchi, what? After I spent all this time? After I spent all this effort?
My quote-unquote beef with Bocchi the Rock is very different. I don't know if this clashes with my brand as a person. I feel like I've developed this brand as like, perhaps arrogantly, as this like wide and accepting person. I'm just a hater.
They're
like
It's true.
I hate a lot of things that a lot of other... Like, last time, I talked about the fact that my dislike of Ranking of Kings is probably the hottest take I have. Like, I never liked that show. And that's probably, like, the hottest take I have. But also up there, I don't like Spy Family.
It's a sacrilegious, by the way. I hope you realize. I hope you realize that.
I have... maybe we could actually make that the fifth course if we want to. It's like the
optional.
I
dessert.
feel like okay.
Dessert. Spy Family's the dessert.
We'll do Spy Family as a dessert because I feel like if we bury the lead on how much we fucking love Bocchi the Rock anymore.
Oh yeah. People have already left. They've already left the angry comment. Excuse me. How dare you? I used to like this podcast. I was a respectable listener.
Okay,
and
listen,
then I noticed.
Here's what I'm saying. If you drop this podcast because you think we don't like Bocchi the Rock, that's totally fair. Like, it's absolutely all right to hate us.
that intro was we buried the lead.
I walked into Bocchi the Rock like I walk into most shows people tell me I should watch, in that I'm expecting it to be okay. And then I walked out of Bocchi the Rock being like, this is my favorite thing since Sunny Boy. What the fuck is going on here?
Listen, if you know anything about Raglan and Sunny Boy, you know that's hard praise to get. That's
Sunny
hard praise
Boy
to get.
is my favorite thing.
Like the Crunchyroll Awards or whatever. Doesn't matter. Raglan saying that your show is as good as Sunny Boy.
Well, no.
There we go.
But my thing is, Bocchi the Rock is another show in a new and popular genre of shows called Help. One of our main characters has terrible, horrific social anxiety. And let me tell you, people are eating this shit up.
What's that new manga in Shonen Jump? That's
the one that you were like, I don't understand why it's popular, and then it revealed that the protagonist had social anxiety, and you were I understand why it's popular.
That one. Oh goodness.
It's like Dragon something.
Keep talking, I'll find it.
So anyway, the other day we were walking around the streets, and it was nice and chilly. I don't know how people feel about the weather. But my feeling about the weather is... So I live in a place where it's relatively warm compared to where Mo's living right now. And I just like it when the weather is like a certain level of chilly.
Masaki Shindo.
Ruri Torago. Yeah. So we were talking about that. Anyway, this has all been like a very roundabout way of saying manga with protagonists who have social anxiety are increasingly popular. And people eat them up for good reason, because I think a lot of like the intersection of has really bad social anxiety and is a fan of anime it's not completely overlapping, but
it's not a circle.
But it's not a circle.
It's not a circle in the same way that technically the Earth isn't a sphere, right? Technically, there's bumps, right? But it's a circle. Let's be real. Physicists approximate it as a circle to do calculations, and that's all you need to know.
So anyway, there has been a deluge of these types of shows that people have been recommending to me periodically, and I haven't liked most of them for different reasons. I'm not really gonna get into it.
Yeah.
But I was sort of expecting this to really function in more or less the same way. But then Bocchi the Rock happened, and Bocchi the Rocked all over the place. And
so
then
you have to
Bocchi
understand.
said, "It's rocking time," and then Bocchi the rocked all over the place.
We just got to the episode where Nijika tells Bocchi that she's Bocchi the Rock, and we can't get over it. Okay, listen.
So if you think that's a clever joke, it's not when you've said it 10 times today.
Yeah, that's all we've been saying. We've just been like, I can't believe Bocchi just Bocchi the Rock all over the place, followed by truly this is the anime of all time.
Anyway, I love this show. It's great. It's great for a whole lot of reasons. One of the great reasons why it's great is that Bocchi is like a character.
Oh,
like
yeah.
she's a character with like needs, wants, and personality. She's not just socially anxious, and worse, she's not just socially anxious so that a male protagonist can save her from her social anxiety and date her.
Well, it's kind of it gets away with like a lot of problems that other shows suffer from just by being like cute girls doing things and thus having no male characters whatsoever. This is how
I wouldn't say that that's like necessarily like the reason it functions.
Well, I think it's a byproduct. It's not like the reason why, but like
maybe
by not having a dude. I guess my thing is
maybe what I would say to follow from what you're saying is it works because it's not directly a straight romance.
Oh yeah.
That's specifically
we were
the
talking
thing that allows it to work.
We were talking about how Nijika is basically a manic pixie dream girl.
She's not basically a manic.
No, she is. That's her. That's her role in the story.
But it helps that she also has her own character.
Yeah,
and
she
her
has
own
her own
aspirations outside
she
of
has her
Bocchi.
own dreams, right?
Even if at the beginning
she doesn't
she's just
exist.
sort of like
She doesn't exist just to like whisk Bocchi off her feet.
Deus Ex Nijika, Lamau,
and all that stuff.
Anyway, so that's another like fantastic.
Wait, just on that point, but like it helps that like since Bocchi isn't a dude, it helps like a lot, right? Like it just I'll be honest, some tropes are just worse when there's a guy and a girl versus two girls.
It's because it's because a lot of straight heteronormative tropes are like
are specifically
great.
gendered, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not, they tend to like, what am I trying to say? Or they're reductive. That's the word. Reductive. There we go. You heard it.
Now we're bringing fancy words into the podcast. Huh?
That's not that fancy. Come on. Other things that I think really make Bocchi the Rock work, the animation is like really fucking inspired.
We're definitely not the first people to say this.
It didn't
You will have heard this somewhere else.
It didn't have to be.
It goes hard. Feel free to screenshot
It's incredible, and every single like it's a thing I like. I've been talking about like the animation quality of Bocchi the Rock a bit for a couple of reasons. One, I'm drawn to this. I love reading manga a lot because I feel like manga gets to do a lot of interesting things with paneling a lot of the time and like frame composition, and I feel like within anime discourse to some degree, good animation is defined as having sakuga, which is having these really fluid, really like detailed animation scenes.
Right.
And I'm not going to be here and say that that's not good animation, because it is, and it's really creative. But I feel like also available is the incredible absurdity of just using fully the medium of animation to be very expressive about emotional ideas. The other anime that I think does this really well is Sunny Boy, which I hear is because the animation director for Bocchi the Rock also worked on some of the best episodes of Sunny Boy. Great. But I think that like one of the reasons why Bocchi the Rock's animation is so good is because the animation direction is very creative and very inspired. It gets a lot of like relatively innocuous lines really get the oomph they need by leaning into the absurdity of the animation to express these complex social anxiety moments when Bocchi is having a fucking breakdown.
I think so. I sort of skimmed some of the manga, and the manga is obviously it's like not bad because like Bocchi the Rock has like a fundamentally like good story.
It's well written.
Yeah,
That's one of its strengths.
Yeah. But a potential flaw with the manga is that there's a lot of Bocchi just like
having mental breakdowns. And that can get like a little repetitive if it's just like, oh, okay, and here Bocchi has another mental breakdown.
Depending on how you animate. I think the manga works because it's as punchy as it is.
Yeah. The manga's punchy, so it sort of gets that. But if you were just to animate it straight, like one-to-one, it would get really old really fast. And I think they kind of recognize that, right? So what they did is they said, okay, if a lot of the story is going to be Bocchi having a mental breakdown, like there are some funny faces in the panel, but like in the manga. But if the anime is going to have that, then we can do two things. We can sort of like cut that and like skip it so it doesn't get too repetitive, or we can just go balls to the wall with it, right? And make it just like some of the most creative and interesting parts of the show. And they went with the latter. And I think it's like for the best, right? Mm-hmm.
I've also described it on several instances. You were actually talking to me about low MS Paint anime openings, which I think is actually really relevant to this conversation, funnily enough. But I've been describing, in some ways, some of the moments in Bocchi the Rock are what I would call high effort, low effort. Which is to say, it's low effort, but it's a lot of effort to make the low effort stuff look good.
Right.
Like, there are all of these jokes about, they literally used a low poly Unity model, or they cut to stock footage. We have a running joke.
The running joke
is that I need these stock footage of dams. Sir, this is the animation department. I don't care. I need it Tuesday.
And apparently, from what I've read on Twitter, that's sort of how it went. Like, there's a scene of like Bocchi just like incredibly low poly, just like flying into like a stack of blocks and knocking them over, and you can see like the Unity axis. So it kind of looks like they literally made the scene in Unity, didn't even render it. They just played the animation and they screen recorded Unity playing the animation. They put that in the show, right? And apparently, at least from what I've read on Twitter, the animator who did that was given the animation direction, and all it was Bocchi becomes low poly and knocks over a block. And he looked at it and he said, I have no idea what the hell this is. What do you want me to do? And they did not clarify, so he just did that, and they're like, perfect. And they stuck it in the show.
And it's great. It works.
It's great. And apparently a lot of the scenes are like that.
There's so much mixed media stuff going on.
Yeah.
That really just works. It reminds me of, but that's, I think, like what's going on is that like that moment where Bocchi turns low poly and slams into a bunch of blocks. Like, obviously that's not quote unquote high effort. It's not Sakuga. It's like low polygon. But the way that's used, it takes a lot of like thought to like put that together and compose the scene, and it fucking works.
And just the bravery of recognizing that would be fucking funny. Like, to be honest, sometimes
the bravery of cutting to like 2 solid minutes of just footage of dams
instead of just animating vomit. Like, it's dams.
That's great.
Yeah, it's like, it's really, we are talking so much about the animation. Like, the whole show is absolutely hilarious. The great part about Bocchi the Rock is, in a way, it pushes back against Bocchi's, like, loneliness, in the sense of she has built up this persecution complex around her own self-image.
Yeah.
About, no one likes me, everyone fucking hates me. And let me say, first, mood.
That's not a bad right there. Bad. Bonk. It's okay, guys. I bonked them.
And so that's a thing. And so that's like the gut visceral instinct. But then the show goes out of its way to show, one, people like her. She has like charisma about her.
Yeah, like she's literally fine. Like, she thinks she's ugly. She's not. She thinks she's uninteresting. She's not. She thinks everyone hates her. I guess, so if I were to take this on a tangent just a little bit, I have...
Tangent. In my anime podcast?
Tangents. This is the only time that CWT has ever gone on a tangent.
Tangents?
Every other...
In this economy?
CWT is famous for being on topic and completely planned all of the time. Okay.
So, like Rock said, the deluge of anime about people who have social anxiety as like the whole reason has not gone unnoticed by me. I notice it, I see it, and to be honest, a lot of it kind of annoys me.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. I'll try to keep it brief, but like a big reason is that like, I mean, I am socially anxious, right?
Oh yeah.
I don't like talking to people. I'm a little bit better at it, but like especially like when I was in high school and like undergrad, like I hated talking to new people, right? And I would walk around and I would see people talk to each other and stuff like that, and I'll be like, oh, you know, that can never be me.
Would you
blah blah blah, this and that.
Would you believe that the two of us became friends because we were both socially anxious and we had a socially anxious mutual friend?
Oh yeah, that is true. that is what happened. We didn't even meet each other.
You only adopted the loneliness. We were.
Listen, you have to understand the ability to write a light novel about isekai light novels can only come if you have no friends and no bitches. Okay, so I am the king of being socially anxious and not talking to people. Okay?
Absolutely.
That you didn't have to say that exactly.
Listen, I'm right up there with you.
That being said, in order to be that introverted, you have to be a self-centered asshole. There's, for example, there are scenes in Bocchi the Rock where Bocchi will be like, oh, well, like, nobody's coming to talk to me. They're all just talking to each other, right? And the thing that I realize is that, like, yeah, you're not special. Okay, if you're socially anxious, right, and you think that like nobody ever wants to talk to you, I want you to sit down and think about the last time you saw someone in public that you thought was really cool. Either they're attractive or they're talking about something that you were talking about, and blah blah blah. And think about why you didn't talk to them. Either, oh, I don't want to bother them, I don't want to do this and that. You really think that you're the only person on all of planet Earth that looks at people that you want to talk to and then decides, I actually, like, maybe it's not worth it, maybe I'm bothering them? You really think out of everyone, everybody else is just talking to people, and you're the only one that's concerned that you may bother them? Really? That's what you think?
A lot of people try to be considerate of people, and here's a hot take: some people don't want to be bothered.
It's true. So it's not even like wrong of you to consider that, oh, maybe I might be bothering them. It's just like other people are doing that to you too. Mm-hmm. Other people are looking at you and they're being like,
I think about it a lot with regards to romance anime.
Yeah.
Especially stuff like Rent a Girlfriend, where there's this compelling idea of, I want a girlfriend, but I'm way too fucking scared to put myself on a dating app and or ask people out. So I really hope a girlfriend just falls out of the sky and starts to love me. Right. This is like that, but for friends.
Yeah. And so the idea is that, like, you would if you saw someone else that was just sitting alone and looking miserable all the time, you would not go out of your way to talk to them. So why the fuck are you expecting every single person to do that for you if you will not do that to for other people, right? Though, I'm not crazy. There's like an inherent amount of just being self-obsessed, right? So that's thing one. And the other thing is that Bocchi does that I also think is relevant. Is that even though she wants a lot of friends, she also has this weird amount of pride in how much of a loner she is, right? She will meet people who are also lonely and who also don't have many friends. But then as soon as she learns that their loneliness is not exactly the same as hers, she'll be like, oh, well, that person's not really lonely. They're not lonely like me. I'm more lonely than them. I could never, ever relate to them because I'm just so much more hardcore lonely than her.
She doesn't take pride in the direct sense, but there's definitely this feeling
indirectly,
of like
that at least my loneliness gives me loneliness street cred, right?
Wow.
And I honestly believe that a lot of people are like that, right? Like you can't say that like, for example, if you don't like parties, like I don't like parties, you can't say that like you've looked at people going to parties and having fun and been like, at least I'm not like irresponsible like that. I'm better. At least I'm quiet. I'm an intellectual. I like to stay inside and read books. I'm not an extrovert. I'm just a little introvert being. You're annoying. You're annoying. That's what you are. That's why no one wants to talk to you. Okay.
Listen, I don't think your past self is watching this episode.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. But you get what I mean. And I guess the whole point of this tangent is that, like, I do like how the show recognizes that this is just, like, unhealthy behavior. And it points it out in a way. Like, I like how Nijika, for example, like, she meets Bocchi. She does give Bocchi a chance. And she is nice to her. But she's also, like, when Bocchi acts in ways that are, like, inconvenient to her, she'll be like, damn, this chick's weird.
I guess maybe what I'm trying to get at, or what I feel, is that Bocchi the Rock feels like it is about loneliness without either using the character's loneliness as a form of projection and self-valorization.
Yeah.
It is very much about Bocchi overcoming her loneliness and dealing with her anxiety and like growing as a person. And it's also not about loneliness as a thing for some external force to cure for their own benefit.
Yes.
It is about Bocchi herself growing as a person, not about how someone else coming in to solve Bocchi's problems helps them.
Right. I guess, and then, like, again, in contrast to Rent a Girlfriend, where, like, the whole thing is, like, if I rent a girlfriend, then I'll become a better person. And
absolutely.
I talked about why that's not true.
Rent a Girlfriend is a great counterexample of, because Kazuya is another character who's cripplingly lonely, but his loneliness, even as the show says it's him trying to get over his loneliness, the show is very much invested in essentially valorizing his toxic perspective.
Right.
And being like, that his life literally would be better if a girlfriend fell out of this guy for him. Also, it helps that Bocchi has, like, likable character traits, including but not limited to being fucking amazing at the guitar.
Yeah. And so I guess, like, the last thing is just, like, I think the thing that really encapsulates this is, like, the fact that even though Bocchi is amazingly talented, and she basically she's self-taught, she practiced for 6 hours a day, every day, from middle school to high school. And so she's basically a genius at playing the guitar, right? But because she's incapable of connecting with other people, she still sucks.
Well,
right?
because she struggles to connect with other people. She's not incapable.
Sure. Well,
the whole point is about her getting better.
She's got to get better. Yeah. She struggles to connect with other people. And because of that, she still sucks. Because as it turns out, when you play in a band, you need to do something called keep tempo. And to keep tempo, you need to be actually, like, connected with other people. If there's a drum playing behind you, you need to listen to the drum, and you need to match your on beats, right? With the drum. And she can't do that because she's never, like, she's never really taken the time to learn how to interact with people in general, right?
Also, as someone who's done spoken word poetry sometimes, and who's also, like, an underrated, under-talked about aspect of any sort of performance is just confidence.
Yeah.
Because if you look at an audience and you falter, you will fuck up. Even if you have the technical skill to do it, the mind game, the mental fortitude to be like, I know this, I can do this, is another thing the show really talks about. Right. And is really interested in engaging with, of, like, almost always when you do something live, it's worse than when you do it on your own in your bedroom. Because you face all of that additional pressure. And if in the moment you're like, oh no, what if I fuck up? You fuck up. There's a bunch of jazz quotes that ultimately boil down to, it's not the wrong note if you play it confidently enough. And that's the truth of any sort of performance, is that you just kind of gotta, like, play like you know what you're doing. And give off the impression that you know what you're doing and enjoy it. Because if you give off the impression of, I don't know, even if you're, like, really cool, you will either fumble or you will give off a bad vibe.
Yeah, you'll give off bad vibes.
Yeah.
I guess, like, what I like about it is just tying the fact that she needs to sort of get over herself and, like, open up a little to others to the fact that she needs to also improve at her music making and ensemble playing, right? Like, connecting these two things together basically sets the show on a trajectory to actually really be that show about lonely people who self-improve.
Yeah.
Unlike so many fucking manga and anime that I've read and watched that are about lonely people, but like don't do this.
Yeah.
Okay, that Bocchi's great. Go.
And we
go
haven't
watch
even
it.
gotten
Go.
to the fact that all of the other characters are also amazing.
Oh yeah, Rio's my role model. Listen, Rio's my role model. I think I have something. I have this screenshot.
While we're here, I have a thing to say about Kitaura. I think a lot of works are just really bad at writing nice people, and it's refreshing to see a nice person who's likable. I love it. When's the last time we had one of these?
Yeah, like nice characters that are actually likable is sort of nuts how people can't do that. Considering that people like nice people.
Right.
Like, how are you fucking this up? How? But yeah, I don't know. I like Rio just because like 90% of the things she just says are more or less just for vibes. Like the fact that she will just like say bullshit just because it's like funny and like not care. Like that's me. That's me. That's me on Twitter especially. Or
So yeah, that's Boochi the Rock. If you aren't watching it,
give it a shot.
Give it a shot. Let us throw ourselves onto the pile of voices that are also asking you to watch it. Show's fantastic. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Meal number 2. I'm holding up 3 things.
Course number 2.
Course. True.
It's a 4-course meal.
Okay, it's one meal, but it's several courses. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the next course.
Okay.
And guess what? You're going back to school for this course because it's Pokemon Scarlet and Violet Transition.
And this course. Transition. Woo! Okay. By the time this anime comes out, by the time this episode comes out, will I have finished Scarlet and Violet? Maybe. I think so. I'm gonna try and like push, stream, finish, whatever. I think the interesting thing about Pokemon, like as a franchise, right, is that it's so like immensely popular that people sort of treat it like it exists on its own, unrelated to other things. People almost talk about Pokemon as if it's like not a video game, but just like a separate category of thing called Pokemon that has its own rules.
To be fair, there is justification for this because you really can at this point really get the full Pokemon experience without ever playing one of the mainline games.
That's true. But I do think it's interesting because when you do that, I think you lose like a lot of like context, right? And you lose a lot of like, by disallowing yourself to compare Pokemon to other things, you lose your ability, I think, to understand it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Pokemon, but like from the perspective of it just being like another piece of media, like just being like another video game. For those that don't know, like the key thing about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, so Pokemon in general as a franchise, all the mainline series games have more or less been pretty simple, turn-based, monster catching, linear RPGs, right? Yeah. You start in a town, you get a Pokemon for free that's either fire, water, or grass, and there's a character called a rival that either picks the starter stronger to you or weaker to you in later gens, just to teach you like type matchups, right? Then you get a device of sorts to encourage you to catch as many Pokemon as possible, and you go to towns and cities that usually have quests to do, or that have bosses called gym leaders. And you beat all the gym leaders, you go to all the towns, you do the plot, catch all the Pokemon in the routes between the cities and towns, and then you beat the final boss and then you win. Every Pokemon game has been like this, right? For Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they're like, you know what? We're going to do something different. We're going to make the game open world, they said.
People have been asking for this.
Yes, they've been asking for it for a long time. So the last mainline series games, which were Sword and Shield, they had an open area where they were testing a lot of the technology for the open world, but it wasn't open world. It was still linear. And then they released Legends Arceus, which I think was also open world.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a mainline series. There was not, the battle system in it was weird and non-standard. And then they finally released this game. The line is that because the open world is a first for Pokemon, this is like a big step forward because they're finally doing something different for Pokemon. And I think this is true. But having played the game, or I guess I haven't finished it, but like I haven't finished it at time of recording, but I'll probably be done by the time this comes out, right? So having played the game, I'm actually kind of skeptical. Why am I skeptical? Let's just like take a step back and like talk about like what does a game being open world do
exactly. Versus a game being linear, right? A game being truly open world essentially means that you can do any of the elements in the game at any order. You get plopped onto a map, and you can go anywhere on the map, and you can do anything. I think GTA, 3 was like the first game that really did this super well. Recent games, Cyberpunk is like this, Breath of the Wild is like this. It's sort of like game industry standard at this point, right? If you want to make a real game for real gamers with lots and lots of content, you make an open world game. You make an interesting world, and you put down a bunch of different quests for the players to do, right? And Pokemon, as I mentioned, is linear, right? It's very much go do this thing, and then go do the next thing, and then go do the next thing, right? And so what they did is they tried to sort of like merge the concepts, right? It is true that the game is open world, but also there's still gym leaders, and there's still a story, and there's still like a plot,
and there's still a fixed scaling order.
Yeah, there's still like an order to optimally do things if you don't want to like get your ass kicked and have to grind. But they won't tell you that order because it's open world, and telling you the order of things would go against it being open world, right? Because ultimately they still want to like tell a story and stuff like that. And so my argument is that if you look at like if you look at Scarlet and Violet as like a video game and not just like another Pokemon game, nothing about the game being open world, in my opinion, makes the game better. I don't think the game's bad. I think the games are pretty good. But like everything that's good about them has nothing to do with the fact that it's open world whatsoever.
Yeah.
I tried to complete the tasks that they gave me in an order that kind of made sense, right? I didn't really want to like walk a huge way along the map, right? So I'm just like, okay, this event is next to this event, right? So if I do this event and then this event, I should be in the right level, right? No,
Yeah.
right? I was either frequently too low, and then I had to employ next level competitive strats to win, or I was much too high, and then I just stopped things. And so the common response is that, oh, that's just because they didn't implement like level scaling, right? If they had implemented level scaling, so level scaling is basically like all the bosses, the strength of the enemy bosses match your current party, right? And so the idea is that like if they had implemented level scaling, then that would have been fine. I would have been the right level for any boss at any time. But that actually doesn't fix the problem, because all that does is it actually makes the opposite problem, which is there is no advantage to choosing any one path over any other path.
Yeah.
Right? It just makes it so that it like doesn't matter what you do.
It also doesn't scale the wild encounter.
Yeah.
Unless you really want like wild Pokemon to like randomly get strong, which like games have done.
They've done
Games
that.
have had basically like once you've beaten X number of bosses, event occurs and then everything gets strong. Like you can't. There are ways to do it, but it's like not intuitive.
Right.
Actually, have a real quick thought on level scaling while we're here.
Yeah, sure.
I've been thinking about it for a bit. Games have been doing the you're supposed to be able to tell you're not supposed to go this way by the fact that the enemies here are significantly stronger than the enemies elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like they've been doing that forever. And I can't help but feel like that's not working. Because a lot of people, when playing Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, encountered a boss that was like 20 levels higher than them. And their response to encountering that boss was, I guess I gotta grind to beat it, and not, maybe I should look for another thing of lower level. One reason I think this is because the game doesn't tell you the rough level of each location.
Yeah.
So maybe if it told you the rough level of each location, it could be, oh, I stumbled onto something high level, but I see something low level over there, so I know where to go. When it's, I've stumbled onto something high level, and I literally don't know where everything is, they lack direction.
Right.
Another thing, though, is that it kills the self-determined pacing to find that, oh, the goal you came to solve, you can't solve it. Go do something else.
Right.
And come back here later.
I would argue that like a big reason why players didn't do the thing that they were supposed to do when they saw something much higher level than them and leave is because
it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good to the map is like kind of hard to navigate because you actually can't tell like elevations on the map. So when you're walking around, you can't tell if like
the brown line on the map is like a little cliff you can jump over, or if it's like a massive drop that will stop you, right? So you will go all the way from point A to point B. You will go halfway across the map to find something. And then you'll get there just to realize that, oh, I'm actually not supposed to be here. Like, you're not going to go all the way back. Like, even if you can fly, that feels sucky. What you're going to do, you're going to...
It feels like you wasted a whole bunch of time to reach somewhere where you're not actually able to progress. So compared to the feeling of, I guess I have to go wandering again, the idea of, I guess I'll just grind it out and clear it, it
just feels better.
I hear Elden Ring also. I remember hearing about Elden Ring discourse. Elden Ring had a very similar problem where if you head the wrong way from the tutorial starting point, you run into a boss that's way too high for your starting level, and players are, quote, supposed to realize that they're not able to fight it and do something else. But a lot of players, when they see something, like, we have been conditioned by games that the solution to every problem is grinding.
Right.
So when you're faced with a problem that cannot easily be resolved, it's not, maybe I should go somewhere else. It's, fuck me, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really interesting constraint and thought about on open world design. There's probably like a whole game design PhD in there about why this happens and how to resolve this. And I'm not going to be so arrogant as to be like, but you see, I know how to solve this problem. But I just think it's an interesting thing to note about the way these new Pokemon games work. Because one of the complaints I've seen very commonly about Scarlet and Violet is a lot of people were like, yeah, I tackled this gym too early and then I was over-leveled for the other gym. Like, it's very common.
Yeah, I have that complaint. I did that.
And it's really interesting, beyond just saying, oh, they should levels here, which we've talked about, that maybe that works, maybe that's just a shallow solution. The question of how do we actually guide players through this world in an intuitive way?
There is like a story. There's like two, right? There's the
three, right?
Well, there's three, but like I don't really count battling gym leaders as a story.
That's fair.
Okay, so I want to say this in a way that makes sense to someone who has no idea what the fuck a Pokemon is and calls all of them Pikachu. So, stop singing the Chimpy. So there's these two different stories. One's about a bunch of kids who are bullied at school, so they form a gang. It's less violent than it sounds. And the other one's about this guy who's trying to find magic herbs to make his dog feel better. Right. And the magic herbs to make the dog feel better is... it's a little bit better because the way it works is every time you beat one of the bosses, you go to this location, and the location pretty much looks the same. So you can do a different cutscene depending on how many like herbs you've got, right? Yeah. So like
the story
progresses normally.
I will say, while we're here, when I had first heard of Scarlet and Violet and these three stories, I had assumed that everything would work this way. Basically, you have three paths, so you can fully do the Titan quest, and then you do all of the gyms in order, and then you do the star bases in order. But after you do the first two star bases, then you can tackle the first. That's how I assumed it would work.
Yeah, but you can just like do any event at any time that you want. But the other one, the bully kids one, like the weirdo kids, it's like there are 5 different events, but since you can do them in any order, what happens is you beat them and then you get a flashback, right? And the flashback has to be written in such a way that the previous flashback cannot lead into the next flashback because each flashback is about a different character. And basically the flashbacks can't lead into each other, right?
Because the game doesn't know in which order you're handling it.
Right. And so because of that, even though the story is like, it's pretty good, it would simply be better if it was allowed to be events that are structured, right? Like if you were allowed to build like themes and character motivations because you knew which order the player would trigger these stories, like it would just be better, right? So I guess I'm left with this game, right? I'm left with this game that's like confusing and frustrating to navigate because the game refuses to tell me where to go because it values me choosing which order to do things over just making a game that's properly paced. I am bad at pacing my own adventure because I don't know what thing comes after which other thing.
I think it's worth noting that the reason early Pokemon games have these like 3 different routes in a lot of cases, like Evil Team plus Gym Leader plus other thing, is because the different storylines break each other up to keep the adventure from becoming too monotonous. Because you can imagine if it was just defeat all 8 gym leaders in a go, and then do all of the like evil team stuff in a go, that it can end up feeling pretty monotonous. So having different types of narrative beats to break up the flow keeps the game interesting.
Right.
But the problem is when you like take off all the reins, right?
I'm gonna do it in a way that's like suboptimal because I did not design the game. I am simply playing it.
I think, and I've been arguing that I think there is this idea of like maybe doing like diverge converge paths. So basically you could do A, B, and C in any order, but then after you've done them all, everything goes to D, and then maybe it diverges again later on. But basically, again, having this branching paths where you can do some things in any order, but at least having like a general structure leading through them, I feel like that's generally useful.
Right. So I guess like my thing is that like I have this game. The pacing is bad, not because it couldn't be good, but simply because I've been left in charge to pace my own game, and I'm bad at it, right? The story is okay, but it would be better if it was in order, right? Is the game challenging? Sometimes, when I challenge the wrong thing. And when I challenge the wrong thing after challenging the wrong thing again, half of it is easy, right? I guess the one point in favor of open world games, right, is that at least the exploration is good, right? But I'm not even convinced a game needs to be open world to incentivize exploration, right? My favorite Pokemon games are the first games I played. I played Pokemon Pearl first, so that's my favorite. Sue me. That was never that. By the way, okay, tangent. That until like last year, that was not a hot take, right? It's a hot take now, but it was not a hot take. Basically, from the moment Pokemon Pearl released up until 2021, when people didn't like the fucking remakes, it was not a hot take to say that, oh yeah, Diamond and Pearl were like good games. But now everyone's like, oh, well, actually, as an intellectual, I understand that Gen 4 had problems. Every fucking game has problems. We'll do Gen 5 one day, and we'll go over all the problems the Black and White had.
Mo's on tilt.
I'm on tilt. I'm upset. I'm upset because now they're coming after games that I like, and they should go after games that other people like. Okay. But anyway, yeah, I like Pokemon Pearl.
One day people will realize that Pokemon Black and White are literally nothing but problems.
They're not great.
Let's not talk
That's not
about
true. Okay, let's
Plasma.
We'll do that another time.
Oh yeah.
Right. But the thing that I really liked about Diamond and Pearl is that they actually encourage exploration quite well. Because the entire thing with those two games is the region that they're set in, called the Sinnoh region. It's got this big mountain running through the middle. And like everything about these games revolves around a mountain. Both your exploration to different places, it's all in relation to where you are regarding this mountain. There's a species of Pokemon called Shellos and Gastrodon that literally look different depending on which side of the mountain you're on, right? A lot of the routes that are difficult to navigate because you are crossing a mountain range, right? The story ends with you climbing to the top of this mountain and finding an ancient pillar, blah, 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 creators of the universe, blah, 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 right? There's the legend about how the entire region was started in this mountain, right? And the way the games encourage exploration, this is more so than their enhanced counterpart, Pokemon Platinum, which is much more linear than Diamond and Pearl. And I think that's... Pokemon Platinum is really great, don't get me wrong, but I think that's like...
In this case,
it's a point against it.
Because there's not as much wiggle room to like run around.
Yeah. Like, a thing that Diamond and Pearl do is that you are, for most places, you are rarely visiting them once. You usually always have to come back. Right? Just thinking about it, the first city you go to is called Jubilife City. And then you go to get your first gym badge at a place called Orberg City, which is a mining town because it's at the foot of a mountain, right? And then to get the second gym, you can't go up to the next gym town. So you have to go back through Jubilife City and come back, right? And when you're in Jubilife City, you actually have some options. You can try and go north, and you can try and go east. If you try and go north, you'll find trainers to fight you, and they'll be at your level. But you won't. But you'll quickly realize that you can't cross because there's like a rock blocking your path that you can't break yet. And if you go west, you'll quickly realize that you can't cross because there's water that you can't cross. But if you go north, you'll get items and new Pokemon that you wouldn't get otherwise. And if you go west, you'll get a fishing rod that you wouldn't get otherwise, right? And so really early on, the game sort of tells you, even though there's a place you're supposed to go, if you go somewhere you're not supposed to go, that's okay. And if you talk to those people, you'll still get rewarded for that, right? And as you continually come back to these places, new places open up as you are allowed to explore more of the map. And as you're allowed to explore more of the map, you'll find new things, right? And because the actual region is interesting and like coherent the entire way through, from like the Pokemon that they choose to be in this game and all that stuff, because everything's like so like focused, it's really, really a pleasure to like explore, right? Oh, yeah. And it doesn't have to be open world. You don't have to ruin the pacing by letting me choose where to go. Don't trust me. I'm bad at it, right? So like you can do exploration. I would argue that the Pokemon games have done exploration just fine. Diamond and Pearl are not the only games that do exploration well. I just use them because they're my favorite. 3. Gen 3 is really good at this too.
That's my so this is the fun part where I get to say, my favorite Pokemon game is also the first game I ever played, which is Pokemon Emerald.
And since people liked Auras, you don't have to deal with that being a hot take. So.
Oh, fun! I didn't even know this until recently. It seems that Rayquaza is the #1 most popular legendary. Mm-hmm. And they're right. What can I say? They're right.
Right. So we have this game that has all these things that are like annoying that I feel like wouldn't be annoying if they just like gave me a place to go every time I finish something, so that the events could lead into the other events and so that they could like weave in like they're supposed to, instead of just, I guess I feel like every time I finish something in Pokemon Scarlet, it's just like dead air, right?
Yeah.
I just like I beat one of the Titans that I forgot to go to earlier, so it was way too easy for me. And I got the ability to swim, and I jumped in the water, and then it was just like dead, right? Like the momentum of the game stopped, right? Because I have to open the map, and I have to pick where to go, right? So we have a game that, like, honestly, the more I think about it, at every turn, the fact that it is open world just makes it worse. And then you get to the bugs, right? I thought I would not, because I'm not like a hardcore gamer. I'm not a gamer, okay? I'm not. I play little things, like I play Slay the Spire, I play Undertale, I play Pokemon, but like I'm not like, you know, like getting like the max specs on my PC so that I can play Elden Ring at 60 FPS, right? That's not me. So when people said, oh, you know, the frame rates and the bugs and this and that, I thought it would not bother me, but it does. Not really for the frame rate. I can't tell if a game is like slowing down or not. The main thing that I care about is that the game looks fucking ugly. It looks disgusting. Okay, there are parts of the game, I'll be honest, there are parts of this game that I boot up and I look at it and I'm like, this looks like something vomited on my tiny poor Switch Lite, right? I know people did not like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and they did not like the way they looked. But at least when I look at Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, they look nice because they're imitating Diamond and Pearl, which also look nice. I look at these games. I was showing Ragwa, there's this place. On paper, it's supposed to be a beautiful place. It's got these like big cliffs with like rocks everywhere, and you're like facing the sea in one direction, you're facing this giant mountain in another, and you're about to enter a cave. It's on the way to the psychic gym place, right? And on paper, it's supposed to look like I can feel myself there. It's supposed to look wonderful. In practice, I look at it and the rock textures look gross. There's like popping everywhere. The water is like too bright. Everything just like looks bad, right? And I think like, why does it look bad? Is it just because Game Freak is lazy? Do they not care? Do they hate the fans? And I think about like Sword and Shield, like the previous games that came before this. Those games looked good, except for the wild area that looked ugly because it was like technologically difficult to do, right? And so this game, they were like, you know what we should do? We should make the whole game the wild area. The whole game should be that way because it's open world now. So the whole game looks like the wild area, and the whole game looks ugly. So I just feel like if they just made a normal Pokemon game, it would look good, it would play good. And the only complaint that people would have is that it's similar to the last games, which were also fine.
They were fine.
They were good.
Mo's on tilt.
I'm on tilt. If they just so the whole thing is that the TLDR I guess that I have is that if you look at Pokemon as Pokemon, I think it's easy to say that like, oh, all the new Pokemon games are like the last Pokemon games. Therefore, Pokemon is stagnating and not innovating fast enough. And I'm not against innovation. I'm not against doing new things. I'm not against taking risks. But what I am saying is that there is a reason why the Pokemon games change so little. And it's because they are good. As video games, as JRPG experiences, they are good games. Right? They're pretty good. Like they're not perfect. Blah blah blah.
They have interesting problems for interesting reasons, which we might save for our next variety episode.
Yeah, but they're like So I guess the thing is that the reason why they don't change is not simply because Game Freak is lazy. It's because there's a lot of benefit to the way the games are, and if you want to change them, you have to actually like think about it before changing it. That's all I'm saying, right?
Yep.
And so Pokemon becoming, I think, open world, I guess, puts it in line with your Elden Rings, your Breath of the Wilds, your Cyberpunks, and all that stuff. It meets a standard, right? It's more like what gamers expect from a AAA type, right? But it's like, the game itself is, so from the perspective of
not better.
Yeah. From the perspective of a Pokemon game, I guess it's better because it's new for Pokemon. But if you just look at it in terms of it like being just like a video game and like how effective is this video game as a piece of media, it's like worse in like every conceivable way because the format of Pokemon does not benefit from being open world. Yeah. That's the rip.
Yeah. There are more conversations we could have about Scarlet and Violet. Mm-hmm. I think my big hot take about Pokemon games are basically the idea of Pokemon is basically Street Fighter, and a lot of its problems come from the fact that it doesn't want to acknowledge that it's Street Fighter, which is a great conversation to have, but we should maybe move on to the next point because we have like two more, and we are an hour in.
Yeah, this is gonna be great.
We really anticipated that. We have 4 points. Will we really make it? Like, nah.
We're gonna do just fine. Okay.
You know what I've been thinking about lately?
Course number 3.
Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. Okay.
So let's talk about it. If you do not know what Legend of the Galactic Heroes is, Google is your friend. I can't be bothered.
We're just gonna talk.
It's an anime. It's a really popular anime. It's an anime that perhaps unfairly, perhaps fairly, has garnered a reputation of being the anime of the snobs.
Yeah.
For a long time, the way you showed you were a, quote, anime intellectual, unquote, was by saying that my favorite anime isn't like your anime. I like Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's a classic. It's still really good. The original OVA is 104 episodes long.
I think it's actually 110.
Oh, shit. We made it, Mo and I, that watching Legend of the Galactic Heroes, I think, was the first thing we watched together. Was it?
Yeah, I think as soon as we
watched
discovered
it before Black Lagoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like as soon as we discovered that we can watch anime together through Discord.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, Legend of Galactic Heroes. Let's go.
We started so we've had a long history. We made it through 52 episodes, and then like 2 years went by.
Yeah.
And so if you don't know, Legend of the Galactic Heroes is getting remade in The New Thesis, which is, a remake. It looks really good.
Yeah, I like it. Some people they look like yaoi characters. That's what I read. Someone said they didn't like it because it looks too yaoi.
I mean, whatever, right?
I mean,
it's the greatest.
People are allowed to be wrong.
It's the greatest gay romance in the space universe.
That's true.
But So yeah, we were like, okay, well, we for like about 2 years, Mo and I with each other were like, we should really finish Legend of the Galactic Heroes, and we did it. But now we were like, fuck it, and so we were like, okay, we want to restart. Because I had totally forgotten everything because 2 years.
Yeah.
And so we've been rewatching through the new thesis, to which we haven't gotten as far as we got in the original, but it's always good to like get through it. I think the first opening for the new thesis, Binary Star, is incredible. And I think the second opening for it is not nearly as good as Binary Star, which means it's bad.
Fair. I guess if I had a TLDR on why I like Legend of Galactic Heroes so much, before Legend of Galactic Heroes, and thus before anime, I was
before anime.
Before it, yeah, because it was like also one of the first anime I watched when I got into the hobby.
The hobby,
yeah. When I got into the hobby, but like,
that's not what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, that's cute. He thinks it's just a hobby. Listen, people on the internet will get pissed at if you say anime is just a hobby. It's a way of life.
I guess that's fair. Before I was watching anime, obviously like the new Star Wars movies came out, so I went a bit through a renewed Star Wars phase, right? Because I was pretty excited that they're gonna make new movies, so I like rewatched all the old movies.
I've also never seen a Star Wars movie in my life. I have a lot of points of heresy, but this is one of them.
Listen, I'll be honest. Star Wars is like not good. I'll be real. That shit's ass. It fucking sucks.
All right.
You do not need to watch Star Wars.
Great. We're just racking up.
We're racking up the hot takes.
All right, let's keep going.
But okay, but I guess like
this podcast was almost called The Hot Take.
Oh yeah, this was pretty close. It was in the running. It was in the running.
It was not a good one.
There's a reason why we went with critical Weeb Theory.
It's fine. That's the reason.
Back up even more. Plot of Star Wars. The original Star Wars is basically there is a war in the stars.
That's why it's called that. There's a war between a galactic empire run by an evil space wizard and a
rebellion. When the creator George Lucas originally imagined it, he imagined the empire basically as the United States and the rebellion basically as Vietnam, right? And by the end, the rebellion topples the empire. They restore democracy, blah, blah, blah. And then there are prequels about how the empire rose and fell. People hated the prequels. The internet thing to say is that the prequels were not that bad. And I was on that train for a while. And then I rewatched clips from the prequel. And they were so goddamn terrible. Like, I did not remember how bad it was. I was watching, like, the best prequel movie is Revenge of the Sith, which is the third one. And I was rewatching clips from this, and I'm like, wow, this sucks. But the idea is good. And the idea is to show how liberal democracy can quickly become fascism. That's like the whole point of the prequels.
Right. And then we have the sequels, and the sequels are about nothing because they're the worst of the three trilogies.
They're made by Disney.
They're made by Disney. That's all you need to know about them. And what really bothered me about the sequels is that they took a big
point of contention of the prequels is that there's too much politics and not enough laser pew pew.
People didn't really like appreciate the politics, and I will say it in their defense. One reason why they did not appreciate the politics is because the movies were bad and they made the politics look super boring.
Right.
But the thing that Disney got out of that was, okay, we'll just not make politics, right? So in the first of the sequels, there's this new organization called the First Order, which is just the Empire again, and there's a new order. There's this new organization, the Resistance, which is just the Rebellion again. But the problem is that at the end of the last movie, they reestablished the Republic, right? So the Resistance is not like a minority; it's a majority, right? It's the hegemonic power, right? Because the Empire runs the galaxy. The First Order are the minority, so you can't do the same dynamic. But they tried to do the same dynamic, right? And they're like, how do we do the same dynamic? We'll just have the First Order blow up the seat of political power for the Resistance, for the New Republic. So they blow up the Capitol building the Capitol planets of the New Republic. And you would think that this is a big deal, right? The seat of political power of democracy has just been erased, right? The movie does nothing with this because they don't care. They just want a reason to make the thing go back to the way it was.
Make the people the underdogs again.
Right. And then in the second movie, there's a whole thing. I'm not going to recap the whole thing, but basically the second movie tries to do politics, and it's also incredibly shallow. And then the third movie, because people didn't like the second movie, and Nazis, there was a whole thing with Nazis, and they hated the movie because there were too many black people. And the third movie happened, and because they hated the second movie, they didn't build on anything that the second movie did. And they also got rid of all of the political and ideological implications of the second movie, and the third movie is just even worse than the other two. So, back to Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Everything that I wanted Star Wars to be, right?
It has the cool pew-pew space fights, but it also has like coherent things to say about like the political organization of the galaxy when the pew-pew space fights happen, right? So it has characters that you're invested in, just like Star Wars, right? And it has like, you know, cool spaceships and battles and stuff like that. But it's also like the battles mean something, because when a battle wins or loses, you'll see which political faction gained or lost from that thing, right?
Usually everyone loses.
Usually everyone loses because it's war, and the show is important.
But the prime minister at the back who...
Oh yeah, the corrupt prime minister wins, and it's great. Like if you liked The Last Jedi because you think the Canto Bight scene is good, just watch Legends of the Galactic Heroes, and you realize the Canto Bight scene is dog shit. You will realize it. I promise you. Let's get into the show itself, though. As I've declared my love for Legend of the Galactic Heroes, I've gotten DMs. I've actually gotten DMs to this effect of people being like, "I see you like Legend of the Galactic Heroes, but as an anime socialist, have you considered that Legend of the Galactic Heroes is not actually very socialist? It's actually kind of liberal,
have you
especially
gotten
with the
these
ending."
DMs?
I have.
They're right.
Yeah, I mean they're right. That's what I was gonna say. Right? They're
I
absolutely.
thought you were gonna like go into like an explanation of like what it is beyond just space pew fights.
Oh yeah. True. So let's actually like dig into that. Right? Why do people say it's liberal, and why do we agree with it? Essentially, so the show is very interested in history. Right? The original writer, because the show is so old that it's not even like light novel, right? It's an actual novel that was written that has been adapted into it, right? Like a book. Remember those? I feel so old. Remember books? You don't read those nowadays, do you, kids?
Actually, they do.
I'm sorry, kids. Sorry, children in the audience. I know you read books. The original author was very, very interested in history, and you can tell that they study history a lot. And you can tell that, like, for example, they studied the rise of fascism in Germany, and the main evil empire in Legend of Galactic Heroes, the Empire, is basically a eugenicist, like Nazi-esque empire, right? Everyone in this space empire is white. They all have German names. There are allusions to the fact that like there were laws that purged people with disabilities.
Allusions.
No.
They said that.
Yeah, they state openly that there were laws in the past that purged people with disabilities, so on and so forth. And you look at the Free Planets Alliance, which is the resistance, the rebellion in this case. Kinda. They're basically they're
a competing state.
Yeah, they're a competing state. The Empire considers that they basically control the entire universe, and the Free Planets Alliance are just rebels. And the Free Planets Alliance consider themselves a proper state, fighting, trying to topple the
a proper successor.
To the Galactic Empire, right? And so the Free Planets Alliance, their population, I will say my criticism is that like the actual diversity of the main cast is a little lacking, but you can tell even like from the background characters, there are way more like non-white, non-blonde, non-blue-eyed people in this country, because all of the people who were being persecuted by the Empire fled, and they created the successor state, right? And the show really wants to talk about like the rise and fall of like different political movements. It wants to ask questions like, is liberal democracy sustainable? Is dictatorship okay if the dictator is like really nice and does good things? So it wants to ask all these questions. So, and they're all like rooted in history.
Yeah.
And because socialism and Marxism as a tradition is rooted in historical materialism, they both like study history very closely, so they both hit on a lot of the same beats.
Yeah.
Right. The problem, which I think Rocco will get into, is that
Yeah.
Legend of the Galactic Heroes really is very skeptical about revolution as a solution to broken systems.
I think so. One of the things that really helps fucking Legend of the Galactic Heroes work out is because it establishes this idea of like, if there's a good dictator, that's not necessarily a good thing because the successor to a good dictator could still be a bad dictator, right?
Right.
You're putting a whole lot of faith in the fact that this good dictator will remain good for the entirety of their tenure. And it puts a lot of stake in this idea of only pure self-determination by the people can be truly liberatory. But then it stumbles upon this truth that, hey, we've noticed a lot of liberal democracies have a tendency of being taken over by corrupt capitalist bastards and devolving down to fascism. And the hallmark of the fact that Legend of the Galactic Heroes is a liberal show is the only thing you can say to that is, well, I guess that happens.
Yeah.
When Mo and I, as socialists and as we've developed into socialists, would argue that the answer is that liberal democracies are not true democracies. That's why you have this problem.
Right.
Because the people do not truly have a say when capitalism holds the ultimate marbles, right?
Right.
And so that's like, and the fact that it's difficult to say a single thing about Legend of the Galactic Heroes is like, this is why it's a liberal show. But the fact that it's not able to engage with this idea of maybe true democracy is impossible under liberal states, and that's why they all inevitably fail and succumb to fascism is big part of why the show doesn't have any concrete answers in a lot of ways. Questions like, how do we make a system better? What about a system that allowed a fucking corrupt, murderous asshole to gain control? What about a system that only ever craves war, right? Like, how do we resolve any of these? And Legend of the Galactic Heroes, because it's not revolutionary, can only ever shrug its shoulders and say, but at least it's better than fascism, right?
Yeah, it doesn't know, it can't know. Like, in the
Conception of the show.
That's another... You finish what you're saying.
Sure, but in the conception of the show, there are basically two systems. There is liberal democracy, which is corrupt, prone to falling to fascism, and in general, not a good representation of the will of the people. And there's fascism. And the show argues that at least liberal democracy isn't fascism. It agrees that it sucks for all the reason that a Marxist would say that it sucks, but it's unable to conceptualize an alternative.
That's the problem, right? That's the second part. It's one thing to say capitalism sucks, but when your options are, I only vote Democrat or Republican, those are my two options.
Yeah.
You end up basically going, I guess I have to pick this one, right? You don't have a strong, coherent argument as to like why other options might be possible. Developing from that, which I think is really important and really interesting, is this idea that Legend of the Galactic Heroes is also way in on that great man theory.
Oh, yeah.
All stories... So here's my thing, right? I want to be very clear about what great man theory really is. All stories, by definition, are about characters, right? That's just the sort of thing we want to talk about. And so telling a story that centers around some characters to talk about a broader idea, that's not great man theory. I want to dispel that delusion right away, or dispel that misconception right away, right?
Right.
Being like, this is the story talking about like revolution, but there are characters in it and protagonists. Like that's not what the word great man theory means. What I would say it means is when Yang fucking Wen Li is the guy who is solely and almost single-handedly capable of solving all of the Alliance problems, and he's so good and so central that like everything hinges on him.
Yeah.
That's great man theory.
Right.
The fact that Legend of the Galactic Heroes basically hinges on these two great generals on either side, Reinhardt and Yang Wen Li, is hugely problematic to the show's attempts to really be about any sort of populist movement, because ultimately it ends up really feeling like, in microcosm, a chess game between two smart people rather than thousands of millennia of like social and political forces moving around.
Right. And to be fair, the chess games are super fun.
Oh yeah.
They're very fun.
One of the reasons the show is still like enjoyable and good is because like there's a lot of drama and intrigue in the political.
Right. But it's the only issue is that because the show it's not just like it's not a sports anime, right? Legend of Galactic Heroes as a sports anime is sort of an interesting idea, but it's not a sports anime. It's a story that is supposed to be talking about like the waves of history and like big political forces and how we make movements that change the course of history, right? It can't just come down to like the 4D chess match of like Yang Wenli like trapping Reinhard von Lohengrin into like a military trap and like getting him at the star zone and like it can't be that, right?
Yeah.
It can be some of that because that was fun, but it can't boil down to that.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
So that's the Legend of the Galactic Heroes take. Obviously, Mo and I haven't finished yet, and we're still watching it. But
We're still watching it.
It's interesting enough that, maybe you'll find it a little bit appetizing. Food metaphor. Speaking of food metaphor, do you think Denji is a snack?
Do I think Denji's a snack? It sounds like we're on course 4. I'm saying this so I can like find it in the timestamps, by the way. But okay, course 4.
We could have been noting this down the whole time, but we are professionals, and professionals. All right, moving on.
Moving on. Is Denji a snack? I think he's cute. He's a cute boy.
That was course 4. Moving on.
Moving on. Course 5. Okay. 4. So Chainsaw Man has continued to be an anime, which is nice.
I hear there are people who are anime only.
Yes.
And haven't read the manga.
Yes. So what we've noticed is every once in a while, an anime only who is not caught up with the manga and who is just watching the anime will point out scenes between specifically Makima and Denji. And they'll point out these scenes and they'll be like, Makima and Denji look kind of cute together. And
look at her. She's so jealous.
Yeah, they'll see like Makima's possessiveness over Denji. And they'll be like, "Wow, she's kind of jelly. Haha, someone else is taking her man." And all of the quote tweets will be like, "You fucking idiot. You absolute buffoon. You complete and utter incompetent moron. Don't you know? Don't you know that later in the manga, Makima is actually evil? Don't you know that? Shame on you."
Reading Comprehension devil.
My favorite one is the Reading Chainsaw Man fans when they face up against the Reading Comprehension devil. That's wonderful. I will assume that people have a working knowledge of Chainsaw Man just because I have a video on it. You should go watch that.
If you don't have a working knowledge of Chainsaw Man, please stay. This is a really interesting point.
It's still interesting.
This is my favorite point.
I guess like if you don't have a working knowledge of Chainsaw Man, it's fine. Just like there's a character who's a villain who sort of maybe seems like she could be good, but she's actually bad.
Yeah.
And part of it is because she flirts with romantically and sexually our main character.
There's a lot of things to... Yeah, go for it.
There's a lot of things. But I do think it's interesting. So in my video, I argued that like from the beginning, it is very clear that Makima, the villain, is not a good person.
Yeah.
It is very clear that she is manipulative and abusive. And in fact, trying to like hide this fact and play coy is like not the way to go with the adaptation. I think the way to go is not to be like super, warning, evil, but like it doesn't need to be a surprise.
And
right?
I feel like the adaptation does do this. And this is the thing I've been arguing. And the thing that I find really interesting is I think it's easy to see that and to see how a lot of anime-only people are like confused and to be like, is Chainsaw Man trying to trick you into thinking that Makima is good?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is very definitively no.
Yes.
Makima is an abusive, controlling person from the beginning, and she ends the manga with no spoilers as to how that ends, as an abusive, controlling person.
Right.
But what's interesting, and what I've been thinking about ever since Mo showed me these tweets, is this idea of like, I can understand why someone would think it's just a cute relationship, because the number of anime where there's an obsessive controlling person and that obsessive controlling manipulative behavior is romanticized is extremely high.
It's I
Rent a
think
Girlfriend is the one that I'm thinking of, but if you just scroll through like any manga website, oh wow, I'm being chased by the obsessive lead is incredibly common. There are so many of these. It's like, and especially if you look at anime marketed towards incels, like the number of things where like the protagonist's obsession and manipulative tendencies are seen as good
or cute, or the worst of all, true love.
Yeah.
Like, I stalked you because this is Rent a Girlfriend again. I stalked you because actually, deep down, I really care about you and want to protect you.
Yeah. And so the idea I've been nursing that I'm in love with is this idea of, it's not that Chainsaw Man conditioned people to see Makima as a healthy romantic interest, because she's definitely a romantic interest. That's a big part. The fact that Makima is hot is a big part of Chainsaw Man. But it's not that a lot of Chainsaw Man itself conditioned people to see Makima as a healthy romantic interest. It's that anime conditioned people to see Makima as a healthy romantic interest.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, I want to be very clear, I'm not saying that anime conditioned people to see those same traits in real people as healthy necessarily. It's hard to argue that media has no influence over people's perceptions of the real world, but it's definitely not true. Like,
it's not like one-to-one, basically.
Fetish and like kink are like a wide thing, and people can enjoy things as a fetish and not want those things to happen in like real material scenarios, right?
Listen, you can want a dami mommy and also not want to be abused. Like, that's the thing. Like,
that's why
it sounds funny, but it's serious.
That's why like there are like, again, this is not the place to get into proper kink protocol, but that's why it's like there's like points where like the sexualization in the kink part starts and parts where it ends and parts surrounding that. That's there for a reason. And in media around kink, you usually get rid of the parts that are sometimes you get rid of the parts at the start and the end, because you understand that it starts and ends when you start experiencing the work, and it ends when you stop experiencing the work.
Right.
So like, the diegetic start and end isn't as necessary. This is not the point. The point is that you can read kinky shit without literally wanting that exact thing word for word replayed in your life.
Right.
So I'm not saying that anyone who thinks that Makima is cute necessarily thinks that abuse is cute. That's not what I'm saying. Great, I've covered all of my bases.
Yeah, okay.
What I am saying is
but you have to realize that the one person typing that angry comment is going to be pretty upset now.
They're already angry at me for a dozen of other things I said. So I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that I think it's really interesting. I feel like this is intentional on Chainsaw Man's part, because Chainsaw Man is in many ways a critique of power and an exploration of how that affects people within capitalism, right? And so taking this idea of, here's a common trope that is romanticized in anime, and being like, no, it's actually fucked this time, is what Chainsaw Man does. And it's not that Chainsaw Man hides the fact that Makima is manipulative, as much as it doesn't ultimately come around to say, oh, but it's okay, she loved him all along. It ends by saying, no.
She really was that bad.
She really was that bad.
This is serious. This is serious. She's a manipulator.
That's part of why Chainsaw Man works. And again, to come back to the idea of Makima being hot matters. Like, that's a big part of why it works, because I've been arguing, under capitalism, being exploited is fetishized.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're trained to see exploiting yourself and subjecting yourself to humiliation in order to receive money and love as a good thing. Think about, again, like the number of shows marketed at incels where it's like, you don't have to be lovable, you just have to basically like subject yourself to humiliation and pay people lots of money, and then people will love you. Like, that's, or you have to exploit other people to get love, right?
Right.
And so again, Makima being hot is a big part of it, right? Like, the whole point of her character is very literally that.
Yeah. Something that I've been thinking about, tangentially related, is this idea of hard work. I think hard work is a capitalist scam. Okay, hear me out. Obviously, I think that the process of working hard on something that you're proud of is not a bad thing. This is obviously a good thing. I work really hard on my essays. I work really hard on this podcast. I work really hard to bring an experience that I hope people enjoy, right? I also don't think it's bad to take pride in your job, like your capitalist job, and work hard to it, right? I think that is a good and normal thing to do, right?
In fact, one thing socialists will argue is that under capitalism, people are alienated from their labor and thus unable to really take true pride in their work because they're denied the full profits.
Right, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So it's not it's not like
Working hard on something, that's a scam. It's the idea of hard work that's a scam.
right? And my go-to example is this, right? We can imagine two people working on, or one person in two alternate timelines, right? Person in timeline A works on a project for 8 hours, and they get stuck. So they work on it for 8 hours, and they say, you know what? It's the end of the workday. This is my 9 to 5. It's 5 p.m. I'm clocking out. I'm going home. I'm seeing my kids. I'm working on my hobbies. I'm going to bed at 10 p.m. I'm waking up early, and we're gonna do this again tomorrow. And then tomorrow they work another 8 hours. They're rested.
They feel energetic. They figure out the problem, and then they solve it in half the day, and then they take the rest of the day off, right?
And here's person two. Person two, they're working on the same problem in timeline two, and they work 13 hours straight, come home, don't eat dinner, don't see their kids. They microwave ramen. They go to bed at 1 p.m. They wake up at 6, and then they work another 13 hours straight, and they solve the problem after another 13 hours, right? And the two versions of this person from the timeline talk to their coworkers next week. And from timeline one, the person gets told that they're lazy because, oh, you just clock out at 8 p.m. Didn't you take the whole day off yesterday? You know, if you want to get ahead in this business, you really got to work more. And person two, and in timeline two, they get told, wow, you are such a hard worker. I think a promotion is in your future, right? Even though person one did better work in less time because they got sleep and they're not stressed. And person two did less work in more amount of time, and it sucks because they did it on like a caffeine-fueled like trance. And their wife hates it because, okay, that's maybe a little cis heteronormative, but like they're estranged from their family because they're at work all the time, right? And they're not like building the relationships that are necessary to be like mentally healthy, right? Being willing to work hard does not just mean taking pride in your work or going the extra mile to make sure that your work is the highest quality that it can be. Hard work under capitalism is just like working yourself to an early grave. That's what it means. It's just allowing people to take advantage of you, right?
And I think just like in the weird ways, like through like Makima's like sexuality and through like the plot of the story and through these like weird like esoteric things that Chainsaw Man does, it like argues this point incredibly well. And I think that's just like a fascinating thing about Chainsaw Man.
I think it's really interesting, like the meta narrative around Chainsaw Man's perception, and I think just how people parse that is really interesting. And again, like I'm obviously not saying that anyone who ships Makima and Denji is inherently a bad person. Jesus fucking Christ. However, interesting that this happens, and I think it's interesting that a lot of people see an obviously unhealthy relationship. And their expectations from having seen a lot of anime is, oh, that's cute.
Right.
That's interesting to me.
Doing this in person with you is, it brings a lot more energy out of
We
me.
have a very manic relationship.
We do.
We
I feel like we feed off each other.
Oh,
and it's limited.
Wonderful.
It is limited when we are not in person.
The number of times I've messaged Mo, what's the weather like up there?
This person's a bully. Okay. I've been bullied this entire weekend. This whole weekend. I invite them into my home. I take them for pizza. I cook them food. And what do I get? How's the weather up there?
Because I think this is the first time we've actually recorded side by side.
We planned to record side by side a bunch before, and it hasn't actually happened. We've always ended up just like doing like Discord recording.
Let's get into the Spy X family.
Yeah, that's where I was transitioning. We have time for dessert, even though we're a little bit tired.
There's always room for dessert. And I have a whole lot of things I want to say about Spy X family. First off, I don't like it's not the worst. I just don't like it. And I can respect anyone who likes it, whatever, right? I think Spy X Family is really fucking fascinating to me because they wrote the most cis heteronormative story ever, and they somehow got the gays on board. What's up with that?
Listen, I was telling them, it's all.
I think Spy X Family is interesting for a couple of reasons. I wanted Spy X Family to be more serious than it was. And so I started reading the manga, and I was like, ooh, interesting. Tensions mimicking the Cold War. And then they didn't do anything with it. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I moved on with my life, right? Because I'm not a fucking monster who needs to, like, put people down for enjoying something.
They're a hater, but they're a respectful hater.
Oh, yeah. See, I'm going to be a hater for hot content and hot takes, but I'm not going to be a hater to, like, be mean to people for no good reason. Literally, I cannot be bothered.
Truly, they are merciful.
But every once in a while, people are like, let's watch some Spy Family, and I do, and sometimes it's like very funny. And other times there's like 5-year-olds getting sexualized and wearing revealing outfits, and I'm like, this is weird.
That from the last episode, I don't know what that was about.
I think about this because I think those moments are somewhat common, and I wonder how many people are just looking at that and going, that's weird.
So when we talk about video games, we talk about like core game loops, right? Like the main thing that you sort of do in the game.
I'm very confused by this tangent.
Okay. I promise it'll make sense.
You got it.
So similarly, I think with anime, there's like, I guess, core watch loops, or I guess core plot loops. And so I think what's happening is that like the core loop of Spy Family does not really include anything weird. The core loop
of Spy Family is aggressively inoffensive.
Yeah, it's you have Operation Strix, which is an operation to get close to a diplomat in order to stop these two countries from going to war, which is really just a pretense for a hot spy and his hot wife and their cute adopted child to basically play house, right?
Yeah.
It never actually makes sense, the things that they need to do for Operation
And it
Strix.
never has to.
And it never has to, because
this is interesting.
It's just cute family moments, right?
It's the rule of cool all over again, right? There's this constant idea of the rule of cool of it doesn't matter how little sense it makes, as long as it's fucking awesome, people will go with it.
Right.
And in this case, it's the rule of cute, right? It doesn't matter how little sense it makes, as long as it's cute, people will go along with it.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, when it's doing that, it's fine. But then sometimes you'll just get, like, the incest brother. And that will be the episode. And you're like, I want this to stop. I don't like you. Go away.
Things about Spy Family that interest me. I think it's really interesting that Yor is not really allowed to be that proud of her own prowess as an assassin. From the latest episode, the moment that really stuck out to me is Yor going, but will Lloyd really love a brute like me? See, I have no problem with a strong badass female character wanting to also be seen as beautiful. And
Nobara.
There we go. Or wanting to like be acknowledged for her feminine, because that's cool. Like that's legitimate. But to see her own strength as something unattractive and to uphold that cis heteronormative standard of what quote unquote beauty means is a thing about Spy Family that does not mesh well with me. Because Yor is simultaneously a cute assassin and also everyone just wants her to be a housewife. And the story kind of wants her to do that too.
So I really like the show.
People might contest with me on that point, and in response, I only have to say, yeah, maybe.
I really like the show. Though I think your reading of it is fair. I have a point of praise and then a point of criticism for it on this point.
How diplomatic.
I do, yeah. We're preserving peace between the East and the West, between the haters and the stands. The point of praise is that I do like how I think it's okay. So I feel like there's an extreme version of what you're saying is that the fact that Yor can't cook and the show, and she can't do a lot of like the traditionally female things. There is an argument that I've heard. The fact that Yor can't really do anything is just proof that she's useless, and this is just another story with a female character that's useless so that the man does everything.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, and I guess the thing that I disagree is that, as the show points out, Yor does a ton of emotional labor for Anya specifically, right? She is that person that creates the space where Anya wants to like go home, especially like as like an orphan child, right? She goes home and she feels like there's someone that takes care of her, right? There are so many parents, God knows there are so many parents that do everything except love their child. They cook, they clean, they send them to the best school, they do everything except sitting down and telling your kid, hey, I'm proud of you. And where do those kids end up? Fucking miserable, right? So the fact that Yor does that is important. It's not nothing. It's not she's useless and she's a bad mom. And the show will praise her for that.
Let's also be very clear, in addition to that, she has a whole bunch of skills as a fucking assassin.
That's true. And this
like,
is...
she's very good at the things that is her role.
And
the fact that she's not good at things specifically demanded of femininity was supposed to be the point.
Right.
That it shouldn't matter.
This is the point of criticism. This is the point of criticism that I have with the show. My point of criticism is that while I do appreciate that it praises Yor for doing that, I don't get why it can't also praise her for being strong. The fact that, to me, Yor can kick a moving car into a wall is cool. I love that about her.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the show love that about her? That's my only question. That's my only concern. Like, why is the fact that like Yor can like throw a dodgeball into a tree and fell it? I think that's really cool. But like Anya just thinks it's weird, and like Lloyd doesn't like bat an eye, right? Like why? Like it's also cool. Like why are these traits like cool
it's
on
not
Lloyd?
Seen as a thing worthy of praise.
Yeah,
I want to be clear.
They're cool
it's not
on
like
Lloyd,
it's
but
not
they're
like
just
the
weird on
it's
Yor.
not like the show is like, oh, she shouldn't be doing this in that sense. But it's also like, or right, because obviously she's a spy. That's part of her aesthetic, or she's an assassin. But it's also very true that that's not something she is allowed to take pride in. That I will, right? Again, she's not allowed, especially because of the core conceit of the show doesn't allow the characters to know the truth about each other.
Yeah.
The fact that, oh, she's kicked so much ass is not allowed to be a thing Lloyd finds attractive about her. Right. Throughout the show. When that's arguably the most attractive part about her character.
It's true. I mean, for me, it's true. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I guess the side criticism to this is also there are tons and tons of scenes of Lloyd doing spy stuff and being cool. So even if Yor doesn't know that Lloyd is attracted for it, the audience can still be attracted to Lloyd doing spy stuff. Yeah. But we never see Yor do assassin things.
We do.
I mean,
very occasionally.
It's the rate is much less.
It's not the focus of her character.
Yeah.
The focus of her character is, wow, it's kind of funny how cool she is at strong stuff and how bad she is at woman stuff, huh? Yeah. And let's focus on her getting better at this stuff.
I guess the TLDR is that there's sort of an assumption that the fact that there is a woman that's physically strong and can't cook is just in and of itself weird and funny. That's not really true. I mean, there are plenty of women that are physically strong and also can't cook, right? So yeah, that's the Spy Family beatdown.
I do believe that everyone should cook, though. Like
you should learn how to cook.
It's a helpful life skill, and especially in a world where everyone is increasingly atomized. Anything that helps you be self-sufficient and able to sustain yourself is useful.
Also, if you're a guy and you're single, listen, not the anime Pikachu giving you dating advice. However, it really helps if you can show your potential partner that you are not incapable of feeding yourself. Yeah. Okay. Like. I read these horror stories
that they don't have to take care of you 24/7.
Yeah.
And that taking care of you will not become their other job is, I hear, extremely attractive.
I read all these horror stories of people, they go on dates, they like the guy, and then it's like they just eat like Twizzlers 24/7. And so now they have to do all the cooking and all the dishes and all the, like, just learn how to do basic life skills. It'll really help. Okay, that's a positive note. That's a positive note. I feel like, you know, we started by admonishing the kids for being losers who don't talk to people, but at the end, we've given them advice.
So what have we learned today?
What have we learned today?
I liked the part where Bocchi said, "It's rocket time," and then Bocchi the Rock all over the place.
If you would like to make me feel the way Boochi the Rock makes the audience feel when she rocks all over the place, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
So even if that's ironic, you're still saying the thing.
That's so awful.
All right, we're signing out.
Yeah, peace. Thanks for listening.
Could you recap that very last point you just said?
Makima being hot is a big part of why her character works, because it's under capitalism, you are training yourself to be exploited for money and love.
Right, okay, I remember.
Okay, I'll leave myself time to edit this.
Hold on.
Okay.
Before we come back in, let me just say, Makima doesn't love Denji. She just wants his big chainsaw.
God damn it.